Hey, thanks for joining us on the Lean to the Left podcast, where the focus is on important social issues and political issues with just a little lean to the left. Now, I just recently had solar panels installed in my home in South Carolina. Why did I make that investment? First, solar energy is sustainable, renewable, and plentiful. And here in South Carolina, we have plenty of sun to generate electricity for our homes. And that's the case in many areas across the country. Now, as the cost of using solar to produce electricity goes down, Americans like me are increasingly switching to solar. In fact, energy.gov says there are now over 1 million solar installations across the country. Why is that the case? Financial returns and lower monthly utility bills are major incentives, but the exact savings you can expect depends on several factors, which we will explore with our guest today, Randy French, founder of Independent Solar, based in Arizona. He offers invaluable insights into how solar power can save households thousands of dollars annually. According to a recent study by Texas Electricity Ratings, households in Texas, Arizona, and Nevada are among the hardest hit by rising utility bills. But experts say that's only the tip of the iceberg and that utility bills can be expected to increase even further in the year ahead across the country. In March, the U.S. Energy Information Administration predicted that average residential electricity prices will reach their highest level next year in almost 3 decades. Residential customers will pay 16.23 cents per kilowatt hour in 2025, up from 15.98 cents last year. For this year, government forecasters expect prices to average about 15.87 cents per kilowatt hour. With this surge, solar energy emerges as a beacon of hope, offering a substantial savings and long-term sustainability. Randy, thanks so much for joining us on our podcast today.
I'm happy to be here, Bob.
Hey, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys do?
Yeah, Bob, we are the most, can I say badass? Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you can say it.
We're an amazing company in Arizona that in an industry full of a bunch of mayhem and carnage and some funny players out there, and there's a handful of really great companies that depend on disclosure and transparency and honesty and integrity and really high levels of service, trying to use American-made products. Mm-hmm. We're one of those companies that has cut a swath through the industry, and we are 21 years in business in a solar industry that is very young.
Okay.
And we did about 40 million in funded loan installs last year, almost exclusively residential.
Okay.
So we consider ourselves experts, and we try to help people go green and save money in the process. So 2 kinds of green.
Yeah, for sure. I like that, 2 kinds of green. What are the benefits of going solar?
Wow, there's 3. First of all, you're helping burn 1 less lump of coal.
Yeah.
About 45% of our electricity in the United States is produced by coal.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know that, but coal is the largest single source of our electricity. So if you don't want to burn coal, that's one number. I will say that you get to have 1 foot in each political camp, because there's as many people that want to save the environment, and that's great, but there's a bunch of people that also hate utility companies and monopolies, and they're free market people, and they want to control their own electricity. And so for the first time, oh my God, in 100 years, we now have the technology to produce our electricity on our own property. So you can do that usually, if you're sized correctly, at a lower cost per watt annually than what you are paying through the utility company. So you get to save the planet, you get to own your own electricity cheaper. And the last thing is, and this has come to light over the last few years, is that we actually are seeing homes that are green homes sell for a higher amount on the marketplace so that actually on the real estate market, so it actually covers the cost and it's absorbed into the resale of the home. So it really now is becoming a great home improvement where you're going to see the return on that, not only on your bills, but also in the increased value of your home. So those are the three that I would have to point to.
Okay, that's interesting to note. I was going to ask you about the wisdom of doing that if you're eventually going to sell your home at some point. Maybe we can get into that a little bit.
I would like to because there's some specific details that you ought to know.
Yeah, okay,
And we'll talk about that.
we'll get into that, right. What factors determine the amount of savings that you could expect to achieve by installing solar?
Great question. I will have to, so here's a funny one. The ladies will like this. Size matters in solar. Okay, isn't that cute? The reason I say that is because if you have a home with, I'll say it's a 1,800 square foot home, I'm just using an arbitrary number, 1,800 square foot home with 3 teenagers that live there, plus the parents. And then you have an 1,800 square foot home and 2 retirees live there. There's a high likelihood that the home with the teenagers has a much higher electric bill. And so if you were to size those solar systems the same, you would get different utility bills on the back end because you want to size your system based on what you predict your usage to look like. And we're creatures of habit. So that can be done quite easily by either calling the utility company or looking at your utility bill, but sizing the system effectively, that and then knowing the export rate, which is important, how much credit the utility company gives you for your electricity, those things, or excess electricity, those are the things that really determine. I'll give you an unusual example, but the state of Kansas recently allowed the utility companies that they lobbied for it and they got it, that they don't have to give any export rate for solar at all. So if you put solar on your home, you can't cover your whole bill. You can't do what we call 100% offset. And if you do produce more electricity than you're using and it exports to the utility company, they're not going to pay you for it. So effectively, there's almost no solar market in Kansas.
No kidding.
Yeah. So follow the yellow brick road.
Big surprise there, right?
Isn't that funny? And there's plenty of sunshine there, but it's odd that because the utility companies are so integral, don't get me started on utility companies, my friend, because they will tell you out of one side of their mouth that they're pro-solar, but they are pro-utility grade solar, so they control the power, so they still have you as a retail customer. And the idea of controlling your own power, they don't like that. So they don't rooftop solar very much. But many states, thank God, the legislation mandates that they allow solar and they make room for solar. And many states mandate. So that gives us room to perform in many states. So there's lots of great markets in the country for solar.
You know, in my case, for example, we've had solar now for about 2 months, I think. And at the same time, I also purchased an electric car. So I'm charging that thing in my garage at night. Okay. Ironically, number one, I haven't really seen much of an increase in my electric bill because of my car. That was a good thing that I discovered. But secondly, it seems like I'm producing probably about 60 to 70% of the power used in my home from my solar setup. But I was a little bit disappointed in that because I really thought that I would be generating enough to send excess power back to the electric company, which is Santee Cooper in this case, and receive some form of payment from them. And it doesn't look like, I don't think that's really going to happen. Is that common?
Here's what I want you to hear.
Yeah.
The common, oh God, I have to be so careful because this is my industry. And I don't want to beat up people in my own industry, but I want you to know Some of the buzzwords that really help sell solar are sell power back to the utility company.
Mhm.
They'll pay you for your extra power. Those are all stretching the phenomena and let me explain very simply what solar does and how that can happen,
Mhm.
but how by and large it won't happen. Explain. When solar hits, and by the way, solar is literally light energy. It's not infrared, it's not ultraviolet, it is called light rays, light.
Mhm.
When light hits solar, it creates DC power, goes through your inverter on the side of your house, or you have microinverters on your roof,
Mhm.
turns it to AC, and it makes it usable power, goes into your service panel on the side of the house. And your solar is what your house uses first.
Mhm.
And then if you're creating excess power, and you do most likely every sunny day, make a
Mhm.
little excess power, that will get exported back to the utility company. And based on the export rate
Mhm.
or the buyback rate is an easy way to think of it. They're buying it back from you.
Sure.
They give you credit on your bill.
Right.
Now, the funny thing is, no matter how you want to cut that, I like to think of it like a slinky going down the steps.
Mhm.
Because tomorrow you're going to use yesterday's credits first, even though you're using electricity from the grid or your solar in real time. No
Okay.
matter which electricity you use tomorrow, if it's from the grid, you're using your old credits first. It's
Okay.
just how they do it. So you're not saving stuff up for months and months. It doesn't work that way. It's literally day to day to day. Now, why am I saying that? If your system is not sized to where you're producing how much you use during the day plus exporting enough to last you throughout the whole month and cover at night, you're using electricity from the grid. When the sun goes down, by the way, this is very important. They literally call it in the industry, your solar system goes to sleep.
Okay.
It is literally the technical term. When the sun goes down, your solar goes to sleep. When the sun comes up, it wakes up.
Got it.
It starts producing electricity again.
Right.
And so the electricity you use at night is always from the grid, but
Okay.
ideally it's from the credits that you produced and gave the grid.
I see.
Okay, so now if you get to the end of the month and you're not exporting enough to cover your nighttime usage, then you're going to start getting billed at the whatever the utility rate is for solar people for excess usage. So there is a rate. And by the way, that happens a lot,
Okay.
more times than not, and not all year long. Depends on the sun. December 20th is the shortest day of the year.
Mhm.
June 20th is the longest day of the year. You produce more in the summertime. Those are just the facts of life. So most people in sunny climates,
Mhm.
they'll use their credits up actually in the wintertime because the days are shorter.
Okay.
And if you're like me in Arizona, my God, we turn the heat on in February.
Okay.
Even though we're in Arizona and it might be 50 degrees, oh no, we're freaking out here. And so
Right.
we turn the heat on short days where there's not a lot of sunshine. We might not be producing enough. So we'll literally get utility bills in February above our solar, even if we have about 100% coverage. There's a little gap in there where we're receiving a bill. It depends on where geographically you live in the country and what your, dare I say, your insulation is not insulation like in the wall or isolation, but insole, the root word being sol, Latin, sun insulation is how much sun hits your house
Mhm.
every minute of every day. That has been tracked by NASA around the world. So we can pull up your house and know it's how much energy it's going to receive, and we would build the solar system to that amount. I would doubt that your roof isn't big enough. So if you end up paying electric bills, you're using more than your system can produce. There's a slight possibility that it was undersized.
Okay.
And so those are real. Those are, and that's the best thing I could tell you. I can tell you there's about 30% of solar installations that do not come close to covering their whole bill. They offset the bill.
Hmm.
And ideally, you should know that
Yeah,
going
right.
in, that this is going to be an offset system. It's not going to be a full coverage system. Again, depending upon the how forthright your salesperson was and if
Hmm.
he was building. Those
Yeah.
are some variables. I'm sorry to be so long-winded. Forgive me, but
Oh, that's okay. It's important for people to know these things because first of all, it's complicated for those of us that are not solar experts to understand exactly how this works. I'm not sure I still understand it. But even I was pleased to see the reduced amount of my electric bill, even though I do have this payment now for the panels that I had installed on my roof and the overall system. I was still pleased that number one, I feel like I'm doing something to help in the battle against global warming. And since I've added a electric car in the process as well, I feel pretty good about that.
which
But
one did you get?
which one did I get? I got the Mustang Mach-E.
Oh, nice,
Oh yeah,
nice.
it's really a hot car. I just love it. And so I think that other folks who want to do this, they need to understand exactly what to expect and what not to expect. Now, are there federal and state incentives for homeowners to invest in solar? I know that there was, and it seems like that may have changed. Is that true?
There's a great website, and I believe it's called D. It sounds like the word desire, but it doesn't spell the same way. I believe it's DSIRE, and forgive me if I don't know the acronym, but we use it once in a while. But it has literally every state listed. You can click on it's got a map. You click on your state, it tells you what the incentives are. But here's what I do know.
Mhm.
There is a federal incentive that is universal, but be very careful about the federal incentive because it is an income tax credit that is called an investment tax credit. Does ITC doesn't mean income tax credit. It means investment tax credit.
Okay.
And what that means is that if you do not pay income tax, then you cannot offset an income tax with that credit because the credit is only relative to how much you pay in tax. An example being, if you're retired a small amount, 1,000, 2,000 a year,
Hmm.
and you buy a solar system, and even if you finance it,
Hmm.
you get 30% of that amount as an investment tax credit. But you can only get it back based on how much you pay in tax that year.
Okay.
Now you can carry it over,
Hmm.
but the key is most of the lenders will float 30% of the loan for 18 months so that it covers a full tax cycle.
Hmm.
And if at the end of the tax cycle, you pay the loan company that tax credit, because the loan has to be paid. It's just a credit that Uncle Sam would give you. So hypothetically, if I pay $6,000 or $7,000 a year in income tax, rather than me write a check to Uncle Sam for the tax, I can do my taxes and show that I paid for solar, even if I
Right.
financed it with no
Right.
money down, I still get the tax credit.
Right.
And then instead of writing the check to the federal government, I would write that to the loan company, and it radically lowers my payment.
Hmm.
But we have to be careful because if your salesperson is not forthcoming and telling you that you have to, it's an offset to taxes owed. I've had people be sold solar and tell me, "Oh my gosh, I thought I got a $7 or $8 or $9,000 tax credit, and I don't pay taxes."
Right.
So they'll never get that credit,
Right.
and they end up paying retail for the solar.
Hmm.
And so it's very important that you understand how that income tax credit or investment tax credit works. My recommendation, by the way, for those retired people that do not have a tax appetite, we call it, or tax liability,
Hmm.
would be to go with a lease because there are no interest fees or loan fees. There's only some lease fees in there, but they're modest. And you could really beat your utility bill quite handily with a lease payment. And it's effectively the same as a loan. It works the same. The warranties are the same. You can transfer it the same as a loan. There's no lien on your house. It's a very great instrument to dodge the tax credit if you don't have it. As far as state incentives, you can usually call your utility company and they can tell you what the state might offer. And your salesperson in your state ought to know also, because he obviously wants you to get the incentives.
Exactly. No, in my case, I received a check from the electric company for
Nice.
for almost $4,800. Yeah. What's that for?
That is a state incentive. I don't believe it's a tax credit in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I believe that is literally, we want to bless you. We want you going green. We're going to pay you for it.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
So I sent that money to the solar company where I financed the solar
Good.
system.
That's smart.
Yeah. And that's going to reduce my,
That buys your rate down.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Big deal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, can solar panels be installed on just about any roof?
Wow. Yes, by and large, most states require what we call an engineering stamp. And what that engineering stamp means is I went out and gave a proposal on a home that was built in 1923, and they couldn't vouch for the structural integrity of that roof that old. A complete solar system weighs about the weight of 6 to 8 adult men
Oh,
standing on
wow.
the roof.
Oh,
And it's
that's not,
spread
yeah,
over the whole roof. Exactly.
right.
Solar panel weighs about 40 pounds.
Okay.
And you got a lot of them. So
Yeah,
30
right.
is worth 1,200 pounds. Oh my God.
Right.
600-pound man. You understand. And there's
Exactly.
some racking in there, but the reality is they're not heavy relative to the space that they're on. They're on a big space across the roof. And they're mounted on actual trusses. They're not just mounted on the plywood. So they're mounted quite structurally. We have a photo of a hurricane that hit a roof and it ripped the roof off all the way around the solar, and the roof underneath the solar was still intact.
That's good to know because we have
Yeah,
hurricanes here in
yes,
South we
that's
have
funny.
hurricanes here in South Carolina. I've been
No,
wondering what was
no guarantee on that.
I was just wondering what was going to happen if we had a really bad one to my solar system, but you know.
No, they are actually, I think the wind rating has to be 110-mile-an-hour wind rating. And after
Wow.
that, roof no longer has, your roof doesn't have 110-mile-an-hour wind rating either.
No.
So we're in good shape.
No, you get 110-mile-an-hour wind and you're probably not going to have a roof. Yeah. All right. What happens if you live in a community that has an HOA? Does that cause a problem for?
I got to be very careful. I'm going to be nice to HOA people, but the reality is that I'm going to tease you here for a minute. They're usually a retired guy that doesn't have a lot to do, wants to feel important, so he becomes the head of his HOA in his neighborhood, and
Yeah.
he feels like he has to be the police regarding
Hmm.
policy and stuff. And they may write some policy in there about wanting to review the plan set, but usually that's just a nuisance policy. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you why. Federal law prohibits any homeowners association from making any policy prohibiting solar. They can't do it by law.
Okay. I know
So
what happened what happened here. We have an HOA and I hate them,
right.
but I just don't like other people telling me what to do with the house that I am paying for myself. At any rate, it didn't take much at all. I think somebody came out and had a look around maybe.
If they know that you mean to be compliant, they want it to not be obscene looking or big, some structural
Right,
crazy thing.
right.
Most installers now are doing flush mount, black on black, very elegant looking solar now.
Hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
like it was in the early days.
Yeah, that's what we have, and the company that I used was very good at working with the HOA and making sure that, and with the state and with the utility company to make sure that everything was all
Sure.
squared away and there were no glitches and everything was approved and fine. So hopefully you guys, if you decide to do that, will be the experience that you have. Now, what happens in if you financed your solar system, leased it or took a loan or whatever, what happens if you sell your house before that thing's paid for?
Great question. And there can be a lot of confusion about this, and I hate to say this, but many times it's because of the mortgage company, whoever the mortgage broker is, they don't really know.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain this. I can't speak for every state. This is very important. But I know in the state of Arizona, Nevada, Texas, there's a thing called a UCC. And a UCC, it's a utility, so forgive me for not even knowing, but the reason I know it is not a lien.
Hmm.
And this is very important. A note, almost all solar loans, all solar lenders, unless the state prohibits it, which I'm not aware of all 50 states, but I know every state we do business in, it's very common that a note can be what is called transferable. That means it when you sell the home, the balance of the note can be transferred to the new homeowner. Now, ideally, that means they're going to get a bill that's well below what the utility rate is at the point they buy the house. Where challenges come in, all of the lenders file a thing called a UCC, and I don't want to get in the tall grass here, but it's not a lien. A note cannot be transferable if there's a lien on the home. So if it's a transferable note, there is no lien, but there will be a UCC. A UCC is just a notice. I've actually had somebody refinancing their house call me up in hysterics. Hey, the lender says there's a lien on my house. What am I doing? I thought you told me there's no lien.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, let me talk to the lender.
Hmm.
Lender will get in touch with each other, and the lender will say, hey, we found this lien on this house. And I said, would you do me a favor and open up the document and tell me what it says at the top of the document? It says, this is not a lien. And the reason is because it's not a lien, but mortgage lenders get in a lane, in a groove, and anything that's filed with the county must be a lien. It's not a lien.
Okay.
By the way, the fact that we're now having this conversation, the UCC did its job. It's saying if you don't transfer the note to the new homeowner, the former homeowner would be liable for that note.
Okay.
So it's only a notification, hey, there's a note on that solar, and if you sell the house, you probably ought to transfer it.
Right.
That's all it is. It did what it's supposed to do. And I have numerous real estate people that I've been in touch with, and I walk the new homeowner through it. My recommendation, if you are buying a home that has a solar transferable note, you're going to have to qualify for that loan, but they reduce the credit score when they transfer because they don't want to encumber the sale of the house. They want you to be able to buy the house very easily.
Sure.
So they'll lower it down to 630, a Fair Isaac score or something. Don't run your credit till the day of the close. They do it all digitally. They'll send the docs right at the title company. Do it right then. It's one fell swoop. It takes 10 or 15 minutes. It's a very easy transfer process. And by the way, if I wanted to talk to you earlier about selling your home with solar on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a real estate agent that you love, but they don't know about transferring a solar note, get a new realtor.
Okay.
They'll be your worst problem. You
Okay.
want to find somebody that's pro-green. They actually have a green certification, by the way, for appraisers.
Okay.
So find a realtor that knows solar, that's happy with it, understands there's got to be a transfer. It's one more little document. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
But if you get a guy that doesn't know how to do that, they're going to create your problems for you. They might lose your sale
Okay.
because they don't get a good real estate agent that understands how to sell a green home, because it's easy, but someone that doesn't know how to do it will make it complicated when it doesn't have to be. Very
Okay. Net energy metering, what's that all about?
okay. Net metering, we discussed that.
Okay.
Net metering is when, by the way, the term net metering actually means like for, if I export a kilowatt hour to the utility company,
Right.
they give me credit for a kilowatt hour. In Arizona, it's about half. If I give them 2 kilowatt hours, they give me 1 back. So
Okay.
I don't want to export a lot because they're going to take half of it.
Okay.
You want to find out what that is wherever you're at.
Okay.
No.
How would a federally mandated like for like utility export rate cause residential solar installations to explode nationwide?
You're reading my mind here, friend.
You asked me to ask you the
I
question, so
know.
I'm
That's a great
I'm asking.
question, my brother. Let me tell you what, I'm about the least regulatory guy on the planet. I want less government bothering me, just like you said earlier,
Sure.
homeowners. I think people can figure it out for themselves. The problem is the way the system has managed to evolve is that the utility company actually in Arizona, we have to ask permission to put a system on our home because it attaches to the grid.
Hmm.
So now, if the utility company, there are many, I mentioned Kansas, there are many utility companies that are not mandated to give you credit for power you give them. And so, if there were a federal mandate, and man, this is so contrary to what I believe about most regulations.
Right.
But when it comes to monopolies need to be regulated.
Okay.
And the utility companies, even though they're private companies, they are regulated monopolies. That's what
Right.
they are.
Yeah.
So I believe the federal government ought to mandate nationally that if a homeowner makes the investment to put solar on their home and create their own green energy,
Right.
it doesn't matter if they spend too much or too little. The fact is they may, I'm not talking about the ethics of the transaction. That's a whole nother story. But if I choose to put solar on my home, on my roof, on a home I own, I ought to be able to get credit for the power I give the utility company, because the utility company, here's my argument, and it's a stupid one. You're going to laugh. There was a guy that used to make buggy whips, and he made buggy whips. Why? Because there were buggies everywhere, and there were
Sure.
horses, and there was a guy that cleaned up the horse manure off the street. Why? Because we had buggy whips and horses, because we had horse. Along came the internal combustion engine,
Right.
and there was no more horse manure, and that guy was out of a job. And the guy
Right.
making buggy whips had to go, wow, I think I need to make steering wheels. Guess what? We're in a place for the first time in 100 years where homeowners can put power on their roof themselves. And the utility industry needs to make an adjustment based on that. They talk about legacy costs, and by the way, they're subsidized. When they expand, the federal government, your tax dollars pay for that. So it's really a broken system regarding a homeowner ought to have the right to put solar on their roof and produce electricity and get credit for what they get. They're taking your credit and sending it to the neighbor and charging your neighbor retail for credit, that electricity that you produced.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Is there any effort in Congress to enact that sort of law?
No, the utility company is one of the biggest lobbies in the country,
And they've
and they're
blocked it.
bought and paid for. Arizona, there are, oh my gosh, there are investigations that get thwarted into dark money. In the state of Arizona, the Corporation Commission, which manages utilities, is a fourth branch of government, and it's 5 individuals that are voted into office. And they get voted in, and they're all Republicans.
Hmm.
They all vote down and against solar across the board. favor the utility companies. So there's been many investigations that are thwarted. They know that it's a corrupt system. And I'm not trying to put political one way or the other. You lean to the left. There are plenty of people on the left that it seemed like under Republican federal administration, there was more liberty than there is now. In the Biden's, forget what, Inflation Reduction Act.
Right, right.
Supposed to be a bunch of money in it for solar, but we haven't seen any of it. And we're talking about utility grade, wind, things like that. Residential solar is the pariah of the industry because it takes power away from the utility company and gives it to the individual. And that is not politically correct. They want to go green, but they don't want you to be green because you control your own retail that way. So go solar, everybody, while you still can. Control your power.
I'm happy that I did it, even though it's not quite what I expected so far. Now,
you're only 2 months in. You might be surprised.
That's true. That is absolutely true. And also, the company that I used is being very responsive in checking everything out to make sure that we've got the right system and that nothing more needs to be done. Now, there is one question, though, I wanted to ask you. If you install solar, do you need to have backup power of some sort, like a battery?
You know what? That's the direction that we're starting to go. We used to sell solar based on savings alone. Now that the utility companies are lowering and lowering their export rate to make it harder and harder, we're learning that if you don't export the energy to the utility company, but if you can keep it on your property in the form of batteries, what it does is it pushes your return on investment out, maybe into the teens, maybe 10, 12 years before you get a return on that investment. There are battery companies now with very long warranties, 20, 25-year warranties. So that is now becoming much more feasible. And here's how I like to say it. Nobody ever thinks of a Generac generator as having any return on investment.
Right.
And I don't want to beat up Generac. Generators are great. But if the grid were to go down and you went to the gas station to get fuel for your Generac generator, you're not going to get fuel. You're out like everybody else. But with solar and batteries, if the sun is shining, your power is running, and at night you've got batteries and you've got lights and you've got air conditioning, and they didn't used to cover air conditioning. Now they do. We have 200 amp breakers. We have great systems. Here's the caveat. They're a little more expensive.
Right.
Add batteries to a system. So you're not going to get the 6 to 9 year on a cash transaction. There is no return on investment on a finance deal. You're getting immediate savings because you're getting a little bit of savings per month. And as utility rates go up, you'll see more and more savings on a financed project. On a cash transaction where you're looking at a 6 to 9 year return on investment, if you add more batteries to that, batteries are not to save money. Batteries are the old phrase, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Generac sells battery or generators based on one premise. The grid could go down. You don't want to be caught without power.
Yeah.
That's how we sell batteries.
Right.
If we add it to the same solar note, all of the lenders finance them. It will cost more than the solar system. So you're not saving money anymore. Your monthly payment's going to go up.
Right.
But it's as if you finance the generator and in your utility bill. It's actually quite reasonable.
Okay.
And then if the grid goes down, imagine all those people in Texas 3 years ago when they had that horrible freeze.
Right.
There's families over there that had solar on their home with batteries, and they laughed at the whole thing. They went, well, we have power.
Right.
We have, it doesn't matter. So I am so thrilled with the technology that's available to homeowners today at a reasonable cost, about the cost of a mid-sized car. And you can have a solar system and batteries and really, really take charge of your energy destiny. I love that it's happening.
Hey, Randy, what happens if you're in Arizona, I'm in South Carolina, we got lots of sun. But what happens if you live in, let's say, the state of Washington or Alaska, where there's not quite as much
Great
sun?
question.
What happens there?
Your solar will produce less, but here's a little piece of information for you. As long as there's light out, it's producing electricity.
Okay.
Remember that. Remember, I told you it's not infrared or ultraviolet, it's light rays. The minute the sun comes over the horizon, even on an overcast day,
Right.
you're producing electricity, just not as much.
Okay.
The brighter the sun, by the way, they sell plenty of solar in Washington State.
Do they?
Yeah,
Oh,
big
I'm
solar
not
farm.
surprised at that. That's a liberal state. And
Yeah. By the
yeah.
way, Germany is one of the biggest solar markets in the world. And you're like, what? But their utility costs, their energy costs are so high
Yeah.
that they're subsidized by the federal government radically because they want to reduce how much oil and other fossil fuels that they need. So there's solar everywhere in Germany.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You got anything else you want to add? Have we covered everything we need to cover?
No, we have. I just want everybody to know that all solar is good solar. Make sure you vet your company that you're going to do business with. I want you to know, I say this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a company that I love and an industry that I have hard feelings towards because there's a lot of bad players out there.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you vet them. Make sure that you know how much electricity you use, how much the system is going to produce that you can use, how much is going to be exported, and what the export rate is, the total package. Those are the things. And a good salesperson who's ethical and transparent, he'll work all those out for you and be able to tell you those. And you'll know that you're looking, by the way, there's only one formula, cost per watt over time. I want to lower my cost per watt over time. Now, I did mention that with batteries, that's off the table because batteries are a luxury.
Right.
But cost per watt over time on your solar system, if you're buying it to save money, don't look at, oh my God, don't look at panel efficiency. I know that sounds crazy. Why wouldn't I look at panel efficiency? I have sold the most expensive, I don't want to name names here, but there's one panel, they're a manufacturer, and they claim we're the most powerful on the planet. They're only like 0.5% more powerful, and they charge more money.
Okay.
It's not about square inch efficiency on a solar panel. It's not about square inch efficiency.
Right.
It's about cost efficiency. And people go, oh, duh. It's about cost efficiency. It's not about square inch efficiency. My God.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you're getting your system. You want to know that I'm getting the most electricity for the least amount of money for the longest period of time. Cost per watt over time.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters in the industry. Nothing else.
Okay.
I don't care. Oh, we have the most efficient panel. Oh, stop it.
Yeah.
But what's it costing me for this? I need this much electricity. I know this is how much my home uses.
Right.
I need that for the least amount of money per month. I got to beat my electric bill anywhere from 10 to 30%. That's what I would like to beat my electric bill. And usually with a loan like that or a lease, some leases have a 2% accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
You're well below the inflation threshold for 20, 25 years. You did a good thing. You did a good thing.
Okay. All right. Listen, thank you very much, Randy. I appreciate you being with us on our podcast. And you guys, I hope you found this interesting. I hope the information is valuable to you. As we all think about going green in every way we can, this is really a way that we can help to reduce the pressure on our environment. And if you can cut your utility bill in the process, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing too.
Yep. All right. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and that you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gatty and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now it's two. Bob Gatty is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Lean to the Left 1, TikTok at Lean to the Left, LinkedIn at Bob Gatty, and YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gatty signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.